Hey guys, this is Pimp here. I got another little trick for you guys. I heard about this channel on YouTube that has a lot of good analysis on it. You know, a lot of good points to be made, and it's just Thorin's stupid YouTube channel.
After this, when you went to Liquid, people might know a little bit of the story. You had like the one little run at New York, and then there was a lot of disappointing results. And the issue with this team was, it certainly wasn't just Pimp. Like, if people don't know, this was the transition period of Liquid. That's why before they had the Simple era where, let's be real, like Simple carried them. And then afterwards, they had the era where they had to cycle, and they went to Stanislaw, and then went to Nitro, and they had the different lineup that became the one everyone knows from like 2018, etc. onwards. And in this period, I know there was a million problems. Like, first of all, when Pimp arrives, they really did do that like an IP shit. Like, right, welcome, you just take all the shit roles, you're the fucking support players. Like, fucking all right. Then if people don't know, Nitro, who was like one of the stars at the time, this is before he was like the proper in-game leader, well, he was a star, but he was still coming up. He was still like, he still had to blossom. I think he had nerve issues personally. I think some of the Liquid guys did in general. Hiko was good, but this is like the end of him being good. Like, this is, you know, before that, the reason why he used to be Hiko is he had mad presence. He could frag out, he could win all the clutches, so he could sort of be a big figure. In this period, he's sort of going off the boil a bit, and if people remember, JDM in this lineup was like hit and miss. Sometimes he was good, but he was never like super duper good. And the problem is he was the primary AWPer. So you look at this lineup, and EliGE was like he's probably the one I'll say is pretty good, to be fair. This lineup's a bit of a mess, right? I mean, you look at it, it's like, where's the IGL? As far as I know, they were taking turns. I think Hiko did it a bit. I think Nitro did it. This is ridiculous, mate. Like, if actually people might think you were the reason why because they replaced you and became really good. But give me some thoughts. What were the problems with this Liquid line? Because these aren't bad players in theory.
No, there's a lot of different issues. The first one being that 2 weeks after I arrived to Team Liquid, Valve made the rule where coaches could no longer talk at all times. So the way it worked within Team Liquid was that Peacemaker, the coach at the time being, was actually the in-game leader. Like, Liquid didn't have an in-game leader. We knew that. They signed me. They told me Peacemaker, our coach, is our in-game leader. And that's how it works. All of a sudden, we had to find an in-game leader within the team, right? So I think in my 11 months in Team Liquid, we had Hiko being the in-game leader, then Nitro, then Hiko, then Nitro again, then EliGE, back to Nitro maybe, and then Hiko. Like, I don't think we at any point when I was in Liquid had an in-game leader for more than a month and a half without the responsibility being switched to someone else. And obviously that doesn't work, you know, that's just lunatic. And I'm a bit surprised that no one, you know, none of the general managers or no one from the outside could be like, listen, okay, we got to remove one of you guys in order to get an in-game leader, because we just kept switching it around. So that was a massive issue. I think JDM, as much as I enjoyed, I was living with him in the house in LA. I think he was a bit of a fraud in that regard. I think when I watched him in CLG, he was a great player. When he was in Liquid to begin with, he was great. Yeah, playing with him, he was bang average, you know, and he was also
right.
Yeah, he just never, as you said, hit or miss. He had certain games where he'd show up, but he was more a miss than a hit, especially in practice as well. The whole lounging thing, you know, fuck cares if you're playing like that, but it's also like it's a body language thing, you know. It's a laid back thing, and you felt that energy lacking in practice as well, you know, and the desire to do well. Most of the time, he was more obsessed about, you know, what our chef would cook for us, and if she would cook fish, practice would be cancelled. End of story. He didn't eat fish, couldn't play without eating, and there you go. We have to cancel the entire practice. So surrounded by people again who just, you know, could only see for their own nose and didn't respect everyone else's time. And I think for my money, one of the things that I grew frustrated about, and the reason why I left Liquid, bear that in mind, I like to highlight that I was never kicked from Liquid. There were certain points when I was in Liquid where I was in the inner circle where they really valued me, and we were speaking about kicking EliGE, we were speaking about kicking Nitro, we were speaking about kicking Hiko, which we ended up doing. So I really got a lot of responsibility within Liquid. I think they liked my presence within the team. But I decided to leave Liquid because I was on a team for 11 months where I felt I moved from Denmark to go into this project 100% to live in LA and play Counter-Strike and live and breathe it. And I was surrounded by 4 players and a coach who didn't give a fuck. You know, EliGE at certain times obviously did give a fuck, but there was just so many issues and so many times where, like, as said with JDM, you know, a great example is that one of the nights our chef cooked a fish risotto or whatever for dinner. Bear in mind, we had a chef making food for us. We're playing fucking computer games. He didn't like fish. Yeah, it's not bad. You know, he didn't like fish, so we had to cancel practice that night because he couldn't play without eating. And if he had to do a Uber Eats or DoorDash or whatever the fuck that was called back then, it would take an hour and a half. So we couldn't practice, you know. And here I am sitting in Los Angeles, away from my family, missing them, obviously. And I can't practice now. I can't play because you don't eat fish, you know, and you obviously never made a meal in your fucking life. We had a fucking kitchen. You could just buy something, do something, go to 7-Eleven. I don't give a flying fuck. Just do something so you don't ruin practice for everyone else. But no, that was the issue, right? So I grew increasingly frustrating with that. So there was many issues. As you said, it wasn't a bad team. Nitro was good. ELEAGUE was good. Hiko was super fun and enjoyable, but also, as you said, he was in the end of his career. He didn't give a fuck at all. Like, he would tap out in the middle of practice. He would. We also, the famous stories about World of Warcraft. You could probably correlate. When a new version of World of Warcraft would come out, you can see certain teams' team ranking just drop significantly because all these fucking nerds would be sitting in practice. Instantly go die. All of a sudden, our passive player would be an entry fragger because then he could tap out and play his fucking World of Warcraft in the middle of practice. So sitting in LA, sitting next to someone doing that, it just destroyed me even more so. So it was a tough time. But again, I think it also made me. I came off and I came home from LA and Liquid being severely more mature than I probably ever been in my life, and that I'm happy for and that I'm proud of. It's also something that I strive to be now. And I'll also say, as much as it may surprise you and everyone listening, look up the statistics because you're right. I came into the team and I was instantly being offered a lot of shit roles. Obviously, Simple left the team, so all the good roles were now up for the grab. And obviously, ELEAGUE, Nitro, everyone wanted them. So I was just being shopped around, on all the shit positions. I think the one map where I didn't have a shit role was CT side train, where I played rotation, and that was super, super nice until Nitro didn't want to play Ali or Ivy anymore, and I got moved to Ivy. So whenever I had something good, I would just instantly be pushed to somewhere shit. I still had the second highest rating throughout my 11 months in Liquid out of all the players that we had. ELEAGUE, obviously, by far the best player. He was the one consistently performing. I was the second highest rated player, and I was not supposed to be that within that team. So I think individually, I performed above what anyone could have expected from me. And I think that's why Liquid also tried to keep me. They tried to convince me to stay when I told them to leave. But I was fed up with World of Warcraft, players not caring, and living in LA. I just didn't want it anymore.
This was, as we're talking about, the time period when ELEAGUE really started to blossom and become like the star player. Give me some thoughts. Who was this guy?
Young, immature, incredible, talented guy. He back then he was he dealt with a lot of passive aggressiveness. Again, very stubborn. You could never mention a mistake. You could never be frustrated at ELEAGUE because if you were, he would shut down. So a fragile little guy. Obviously, also very young. I think when I joined the team, he must have been 16, 17, maybe 17, 18. Yeah, super young, so I get it, probably not worse than I was when I was 16, but from a guy who now grew up and had learned a lot, he was hard to play with. There were conversations within Team Liquid at times where certain players would say it's either me or him. It would all be like it's either me or ELEAGUE, and there was different players having different periods where it would be either we kick ELEAGUE or I'm out. So he had that effect on people. Obviously never manifested it. We realized that ELEAGUE was too good to kick, and the player would turn around and be like, "Yeah, you want to play for CLG? Go ahead." So he was tough to play with, but as you said, incredibly talented. I think I said it before. You highlighted it as well. He is the most, from a mechanical point of view, the most talented player I've ever played with. He's better than AC. He's better than Device, who I've never played on a team with him, but played with him and played pucks with him. He's better than everyone I've ever played with from a mechanical standpoint. You could already see that back then, and I'm not surprised he turned out to be the greatest NA player of all time. Not surprised that this whole Stewie ELEAGUE conversation was, maybe at certain points there was a conversation to be had, but I have no doubt that was going to be ELEAGUE, with time. He was fantastic. Not a great teammate, passive aggressive, would shut down, would leave TeamSpeak in the middle of a game, would if we had a demo review, if you dared to say something to him, if you dared to say, maybe next time you could do this and throw this flash for me, you just knew that he'd be like, either he'd shut down and be like, yeah, sure. Yeah, okay, so you're going to throw the flash for me? Yeah, sure. So, or it'll be like him not listening or him leaving TeamSpeak or leaving Ventrilo. So he was not easy to play with, but he also, at least in my 11 months, grew a lot. We hired a sports psychologist to work with him as well. That helped massively for him and some of the other players in the team. And yeah, it was, as you said, it was a transition period for Team Liquid. And once more, I think we got hit by a bit of bad luck with the whole Valve ruling about, our coach couldn't be our in-game leader, which then frustrated everyone. And then obviously ELEAGUE, being 17 years of age, had a period of a month where he was in-game leading Team Liquid, which obviously from the outside perspective was a terrible idea, but I guess we tested it and found out that didn't work. So yeah, as I said, Probably the best player I've ever played with from a mechanical point of view. He's fantastic.
I know what you mean now by how you say your major runs are so cursed, because this last one that you had in Liquid is ridiculous. Because, guys, it was when we went to the Swiss system and Liquid was in the 2-2 game, right? Think about it, 2-2 game. That's got to be a beatable team. You had to play fucking Astralis, who won the event.
Yeah.
In the 2-2 game.
And that was back in the day. You were covering the tournament, probably, right? They did the live draws, so you're in different balls and we're like standing in this hallway and they did the live drawing and we knew coming into the game, okay, we can't face that team because we already played them. We can face Astralis. I think it was Godsend, another shit team, and a fourth shit team, So we had a 25% chance of drawing Astralis. And I would, till this day, say that any of the other teams we could have drawn outside of Astralis, we would have beaten. We were playing well. We had a 2-week boot camp leading into that major. We actually got our shit together. Not too many arguments, not too many problems. Zeus came into the team as well. He was our coach at the time, being fantastic guy. We would have beaten whoever the fuck we would have played in that game, apart from Astralis. Once again, one game away from making playoff. Once again, I feel like against Astralis we got shit on. I think we lost 16-4, 16-5 or something like that. And it was almost like the second we saw Astralis being drawn against us, it was like you could just look around and everyone just realized, okay, cool, we lost. Like no one believed that we could actually beat them. And I don't even know and recall why Astralis was a 2-2 team at the time being. I think they were good.
They were really good, yeah.
Yeah, we just felt like there's no way we beat them. Like you can face Godsend or you can face, I think that was when Fnatic was a shit team as well, where they had like different iterations where Godsend and Fnatic were split up, in two teams. And there was a fourth team as well where like we were 100% sure we're going to beat them, no doubt about it. And then we draw Astralis and we're out of the major. That's great. That's when we then kicked Hiko, I think, because it was time B.
As people can tell, obviously not getting to play a major playoffs is a source of frustration for you, because here's the thing, Pimp. Even though Maniac himself, like he had a way, individually, if people don't know, Maniac was worse than Pimp, and he certainly wasn't a player that was in star roles. But he can always say, like, I was in the semi-finals of a major. I almost made the finals. I've been in the playoffs of major. That's something you can say that it can make the little hater go, oh, okay, fair enough. Is it a bummer to you? You never even got one playoff run, just one.
Yeah, it is. It is. Like I think it's a bummer. I don't have a trophy. I don't have a tier 1 trophy, and I don't have a playoff run. And I think if you listen to this entire thing, there's been plenty of occasions where that should have happened, where that could have happened. So yes, when you go look at my trophy cabinet, there's a lot of Danish LAN events. There's a lot of Nordic LAN events. There's some minor tournaments as well, but there's fuck all, on the tier 1 scene. You go look at my major history. It just says majors played 6, playoff appearance 0.
Right.
It doesn't tell the full story at all, as you said. That game against Astralis sucks, but again, had we drawn anyone else, we would have been in the playoff. Against Na'Vi, again, it's the one game that really, I think I've mentioned it 3 times already, but it's the one game that I never forget. Like we're playing Dust 2. I think we are in the first overtime. We're leading 18 to 16. It must have been, and we are in a 4v2 Dust 2 A side. We planted the bomb. Right, it's basically unlosable. 2 CT players is walking up from CT spawn, one of them being an AWP Guardian from Na'Vi. You cannot win that retake. It's like you play that around 100 times and you win it 99 times. For some fucking reason, Nico decides to go on catwalk on short, peek down CT spawn, miss his shot, then get shot by Guardian. I'm standing ramp, I'm peeking out on his contact. I lose by duel to, I think, Flamey at the time being. Still a 2v2, the bomb is still planted, time is running out, and then somehow Glaive and someone else loses that round. Like, it's basically unlosable. And it's, back in the day, you have to remember, if you qualified for the playoff, that is one thing. Maybe we could have gone on to a semifinal. Maybe we could have gone on to win big prize money, but you also guaranteed yourself for the next major.
Sure.
Like your team guaranteed yourself to be part of the next major if you were in the playoff, which guarantees that the team is sticking together. Exactly what happened is that we lose that round to Na'Vi. We then disband 2 weeks after, and the entire thing just went up to shit because we couldn't win a round that you win 99 out of 100 times. And that obviously doesn't say when you look at major appearances 0. So yes, it is a massive... Like it's not a regret. It's just I don't think it's fair. I think honestly, if I have to be as unbiased as possible, judging my own career, I think I was a significantly better player than anyone nowadays would give me credit for. And I think my palmarès, so to speak, and my trophy cabinet, or at least my achievements, should be significantly better than they are. And much of it, of course, I play a part in, but much of it is down to not being at the right time at the right moment. To be completely honest.
One other thing that I want to go back a little bit on is we'll go back to how Dignitas ended. So in that time period I talked about, we'll go back to that Gfinity. Just after this, the team's still a good team. They're on the outskirts, sort of like a dark horse team. And this famous thing happens, which is finally Nico with a C gets booted out. Because as I say, like, mate, at this point in time, he's been living off the name Nico for about a year at that point in time. Like, it was ages since he was good. And everyone was hoping in the team, give him time. He might get it back together, or maybe he'll find, and he never did. And we won't go into why, but his problems behind the scenes continued. And there's a reason why he left the game. And basically, that left you without an AWPer. And because it's an MSL team, it's a very structured team, the AWP is a big deal. Like, you need an AWP in that team. In fact, you need someone who can be a stable AWPer ideally, so you can actually like set tactics up and have the spots. And famously, even though you're actually one of the best players in the team with the rifle, you took on AWPing. This is a detail people might not know. And I would say this, I wouldn't say it was outright bad, it was up and down. And the problem you had, Pimp, is it's like trying to become primary AWP if you're not a primary AWPer. It's like trying to become IGL if you've just done a bit of IGL or secondary calling. It might be easy to remember that game you had where you were popping, you picked up the AWP, you got the kills, you went, I'm going to keep this. You win the half, you know what, I could fuck around and be an AWP. That's what all the secondary callers think. That's why they all think they can be IGLs. But the problem with it is, not only do you have to dedicate yourself, but when you do it all the time, it's really hard. Like, I always tell people, it's like one of my principles in the modern day analysis. I think tier 1 AWPer is the biggest mismatch in the game when you meet a better AWPer. Like, if you meet the guy who is like Kenny S. Guardian, listen, you could be really good even. You could be someone like Alu or something. You might just get cooked that game because it's AWP's like you kill or you don't kill. It's not like the rifle. So you peek, he kills you, then you just look shit even though you're really good. So in this team, famously, this not only tanked your stats and the team wasn't winning, but then they booted you from the team. So when you look back now, right, give me your thoughts on this now, all these years. I would say it's 9 years later now, mate. And within that, I want to also know, if you could go back, would you just not do it? Like, if you didn't do it, would you still be in Dignitas now? Would you have been going into the next year with them, etc.? What do you think?
I don't think so. I don't really regret doing it, but you're not wrong when you're laying it out as you do. Everyone thought they could, I was always the secondary AWPer on all my teams, and I was a decent AWP player, especially CT side. And especially CT side when I was primary AWPing as well, I did fine. But the T side AWPing is a different skill set. If you know Kenny is, if you're not fast as fuck, or if you don't have that, vista for it, it's very hard to function and be consistently putting out numbers on the T side with an AWP, especially back then. So I was, as you said, I was tanking a little bit. I think I went from like having an average rating of 110, 111, 112 with the rating 1.0 thing, to now being a 104, 103, 102 rating event player, which, as you said, it's not bad, but it's not great for an AWP player. At the time when I said yes, I thought it was the right thing to do, and I thought it was our only solution. Like, there was not any other AWP player we could have picked up. So I don't really regret it in that regard. I also don't think I would have stayed in Dignitas had I not done it, because this was at the time when me and MSL were, instead of being like best buddies and obviously getting into arguments all the time, but still, having each other at heart. One may even say that we loved each other back then as best friends. We were growing apart, and we would get into different arguments, more spicy arguments and more, just rude arguments in a way. So I think regardless of what would have happened back then, I think as soon as Nico left the team, we also lost a reasonable voice that could keep us a bit in check. And that's when our egos and our attitude got out of control. And at the end of the day, it came down to it's either MSL or me. They kick. And I think Sonic, that's when he came in and had his first experience with us. And he was like, MSL is the in-game leader. You kick Pimp. Which I don't blame him for. I don't blame Dignitas for it. But I do think it was not nice, because MSL basically, I grew up with him. I played with him for 8 years or something, and then from one day to another, we have barely spoken ever since.
Wow, it's still there. They're still present in the air.
Yeah, I mean, we texted once in a while, but it would never be a friendly text. It would more be like about a team or a tournament or about a travel to a tournament or whatever. Like there was nothing personal at all. It just went from. We went from being great friends and best buddies within the gaming community, sort of, to just hate each other. To a point where I remember the last event I played for them, that was Zero Lane, I think, in America or something. We lost to some shitty American team.
I think it was Conquest, which was like Stanislaw and them, I think.
Yeah, Stanislaw and Shazam and like whatever.
Yeah.
The team knew they were going to kick me after that event already.
Right.
I didn't know, but I could feel it, So after day 2, at the event, I could, this little smirk MSL was whenever I said something, whenever I suggested something, whenever I said something in regards to the future or what we could try to do to better ourselves, he would just smile and be like, like he would just give me that little smirk, He didn't listen. He didn't respond to what I was saying. I was like, what the fuck? Where does that come from? He was being maliciously evil to me as well during that event. Like he was treating me real bad, He was saying, and expressing himself in a way, that was spiteful, almost. And I was like, what the fuck does this come from? And then I put two together. Okay, surely I'm on my way out of the team. So I messaged Odie, the owner of the team, Dignitas back in the days, and asked him what the fuck is up. And he basically admitted to me, before we went into the game to Conquest, that yes, after this tournament, we made the decision to remove you. He didn't want to do it. He wanted to keep me. The team wanted to keep MSL, blah, 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 blah. And here we are. So that was a bit of a bummer, especially when you're in America and you have a long travel home. So I just spent, 3 days chilling and hanging out with Kirby. Me and him were still good friends. We could hang out and still have a good time despite them kicking me. He didn't really have anything to say, but MSL just that's my last memory of him as well. He was just a fucking, he was being really mean, in a very bullish way. Once he knew that he had secured the team would kick me, that's when he took over and he was really being smirk and really just being a shitty person, in that regard. And I remember that's when I lost all the respect that I had left for him.
One thing I've always appreciated when you've done analysis, because I share this same qualities, I'll give you an example. So right now, one of the people, it's not actually me beefing with him, he tried to beef with me, and I even thought when he was on Apex, who gives a fuck, it's Apex. But when he joins Na'Vi in the top team, I will address JL. If he's going to be trying to be going back and forth, okay, at that point, you've got the status, you're in World Championships now, mate, you're on top team, we can do the beef if you want. My thing's like rappers, mate. It's like, if I'm Jay-Z, I don't go and have a beef with some guy you've never heard of on a mixtape. You got to be a famous guy as well, then we can go head to head. But even if I do that, I'll still give it up if you have an awesome tournament. Yeah, you were the MVP or you own this game, because to me, I can separate it. The guy that plays the game is different from the personality outside. Not a lot of people are like that. And even though fans always cry at us analysts that we're biased, I've actually always been impressed that if people knew this backstory you've just explained, dude, it'd be very easy to be on events and wait until Astralis loses and you could maybe down plays on it, or ask how he got outgamed by Blade, or there's a million angles you could take. You could take people like MSL, think of all the events you've done MSL's been at. You could sort of be like, well, you could be way harsher than you were earlier and be like, well, he's easy to figure out, isn't he? If he's such a big brain, why does he do the same thing all the time? You could have got your digs in there a million times over, mate. But I actually never saw you do this. If people don't know, fans who don't know this backstory think you're the biggest Astralis dick sucker of all time, and they think it's just because of the Danish angle. So give me your thoughts. Is this something you've consciously thought about? I feel like you've always been extremely fair to these players, no matter what your personal history was as a player.
100%. I think that's, for me personally, there's different ways of doing broadcast work, right? And with different personalities, different angles to it. I think for me, it's the integrity of our job. If sure, you can be biased to a certain degree, as long as you declare the bias or declare why you're biased in certain regard. But I think if I were to do that, if I were to be spiteful, or if I were to treat Sonic, treat MSL, treat anyone who may have done me harmful in my career differently at any point doing my job, then I would do that selflessly to make myself feel better. But as you said, no one else know why I'm doing it, and it would just be a bad shout. That would be, for me, that would be a direct attack on the integrity of what we're hired to do. We're hired as freelancers. We're hired by a tournament. They expect us to be professional. They expect us to do our job to our best qualities, and they don't hire me to be, holding up personal vendettas against X, Y, and Z. I've seen certain of our colleagues, throughout this years, I've done this for 7 years now, as well, who's done that, and I personally disagree with it a lot. It's for the same reason that I don't. I think I can proudly say, and you probably know that from speaking to some of our co-colleagues, right? I don't really participate in any of the socializing, doing events with other colleagues. I don't socialize with any of the players ever. I can proudly say, I can openly say that I don't think I have a single person within the pro community who's actively playing right now who I consider a friend at all. So I have no strings attached to anyone whatsoever, and I think it makes me better at my job. I think it makes it easier to do that and not have to constantly think about treating them fair, but that's just how it is, Whereas other people within our industry are best mates with X, Y, and Z and the players, Boopski,
and you can tell, you can see the obvious ones when they're friends, right?
Yeah, exactly. Now, Boopski obviously coming in as doing talent work now as well, and he's new to it as well. He obviously recently played with Yabi and some of those boys, so there's going to be a certain attachment to them, and it's not to put that at fault. I get that, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It can also be used as a good thing. He's maybe a bit closer to the players, has a finger on the pulse, but I think it's a very fine line to walk, and I don't want to befriend any players. I want to be able to, as you said, I want to be able to go up to this segment and be incredible harsh on a player that I may like or may respect or may met in the lobby or had a great conversation with the day before, and feel like I'm not betraying his trust in me. And I think at the end of the day, most players know that. Most players know that I can be approached. I can speak with you. We can definitely have dinner together, or say hello to each other at the hotel elevator, or do a quick talk or whatever, But I am not befriending anyone. I'm not going out with anyone. I'm not spending time privately with anyone. Always made a great case out of separating my life, So when I'm at home now, not doing events, I have not a single friend, a single person in my life who gives 5 fucks about esports. None of my friends, none of my surroundings have anything to do with that shit. None of my family, none of it. And that's the way I keep it separated and live with it. So I like that, and I think it makes me better at my job, and it definitely makes sure that I would never cross that line, which I think would be a direct attack on the integrity of what we do. If I were a TO and I hired someone and I could feel that someone, had a spiteful attack on X team, X player, and didn't, I guess, provide the work that you were hired for in the first place, then I would not hire that guy again. But we see things differently.
In the analysis role, this is one of those jobs where people don't realize, it's why when people on Reddit are still just stuck on but do they know the tactics? Mate, you don't even know the entire fucking job. The problem with that job is it's things like building up on camera skills, knowing how to work with teammates, how to be entertaining even if you're making a good point. I think a classic one is it takes years to develop your identity, your voice, as it were. It's not, you can't, where everyone starts and they're sort of a bit generic and saying the same things, and then you develop into people, and then we all know the distinct personalities that we all know and love, and people argue who they want on the desk. In your case, right, in the early years, you also had another thing going on, which we've alluded to earlier, which was part of you still thought, I might do some of these events and then maybe get a team though, or maybe I'll do it, and maybe I'll even say, fuck it, go 6 months, train, and then get another squad. It's not too late. We're only talking obviously you did this immediately after you finished your job. You were right in that position. So how many years would you say that transition period took? Was it a few?
I'd say probably 1 year. I think I knew after a year that if I wanted to get a team now, it would be one of those things where, as you said, you have to take time off doing broadcast talent work and then grind the game for 6 months, then come back in and you'd start, at a team like Tricked or whatever the hell they were called back then, and had to work your way up, sort of like Glaive did it when he joined Heroic, or C-Play and then Heroic and then Astralis. And I think I grew into the broadcast work and I got better, I liked it. I think when I look back at some of my first segments and some of my first tournaments, obviously I'm god awful, and I have no fucking idea why anyone would rehire me or give me more events back then, but thankfully they did. And I think nowadays I'm decent, so yeah, I think a year probably, where I realized that, listen, this is probably going to be what I do now for the next foreseeable future. It's also around that time where the first 6 months when I left Team Liquid, I would still get offers from different teams. I remember, what was the team that was located in Detroit?
Renegades.
Renegades, yeah, there you go. After leaving Liquid, they came in with an offer, wanted to double my salary, give me the best contract I could possibly get, at the time being, especially financially. But I had to live in Detroit and live in NA again, and I didn't want to do that. Heroic, I was in conversations with Heroic as well. I was in conversations with Hellraisers, which back then was a decent team, placeholder team in Europe. There was this time where I was standing in for Astralis, played a couple of online tournaments for them, and then it was between me, Dennis, and Rubino to play the Royal Arena event and play the ESL Pro League events in Odense, I think, as the stand-in, because Device was out. Ended up not being me. So the first 6 months, I was close, I was engaging in the conversations. I was thinking about Astralis. Maybe there's a way I finally get my shot, maybe all this bad luck that I've had, and all this karma that I've been exposed to and all the dumb shit I've done, maybe it's turning around now. I was still believing that back then. But I think after a year, offers ran out, no one would approach me, and that's when you realize, listen, if I have to play again, then I have to start all over, and I was not interested in that at all.
One thing on that topic of developing your voice, your personality as an analyst and on-camera broadcast talent is one thing I've always said to you, and I actually don't know, you can tell me if it's been resolved yet, I sometimes wonder, which is, I always told you, if people don't know, by the way, what people don't get is this, Pimp. You can say whatever you fucking want about what you think I know about CS or tactics. I don't really give a fuck. That's my secret superpower, guys. But I'll tell you one thing I'm fucking amazing at is not only in the game do I think I'm really good at like identifying the good players. Am I good at identifying the good talent, for fuck's sake? How many people have come up who I've known, but even helped get gigs and stuff? And one of the things about talent is, because I did it myself, I know this formula that you've got to kind of figure out your own unique slice of how you're going to do analysis. And it can have a little bit of overlap, but it's got to have an element that's uniquely you, because that's your best selling point. At that point, they're not hiring you because you know the most T-side tactics. They're hiring you because they want you. They want you on that desk in that balance of with this guy and with this host, and that's the best way to do it. So in the same way as I always told Maniac, and you know what, over the years, I think it seeped in there. I think he's done it. If you think, guys, I told Maniac at the beginning, your role, not least because you literally have a fucking degree, mate, but you need to be the professor of Counter-Strike. You need to be the guy who's very classy with the suits, and your style is you're never going to flame them. You're always going to explain in a very calm voice, but very classy, because that's who Maniac is. He speaks all those fucking languages. He has that suave quality. I always said, mate, this is the obvious archetype for you. For you, Pimp, I've always told you this, which is this. I would say to you in a green room, that's a straight fire opinion, mad edgy, but say it on the fucking desk. And the problem is, Pimp didn't always say it on the desk. Sometimes he would come to the desk and all of a sudden, this fucking wild take about why this player was a fucking bomb who lost the game, or like you always knew they were going to fucking let you down this way, whatever it would be, or this player's like actually secretly way better than some superstar. Suddenly that would just transform into sort of like, you know, like a more tame version of that. Sort of like, you know, they didn't play as well as I thought they could have done, you know, they didn't show up in the same way. Now, I've noticed you did let it leak out every now and then. A famous one I do remember was, you did successfully get the maddest take of all time on a desk, which was the one where you said maybe simple as the problem in Na'Vi. Like, I won't lie, that is it, actually, by definition, I think that is the greatest hot take ever in the history of Counter-Strike on a desk, because no one, my tweets are what people go bad off. I've never said anything as crazy as that on a desk, but you only let that out one time, and I do get the vibe, like everyone on the internet just smashed your head in, metaphorically, and you were like, never doing that shit again. So I want to know.
For half a year.
So let me know, where are you on this thing? Like, do you still have this issue? How have you fine-tuned it? What would you say on this? Was it an issue too? Maybe you disagree.
No, I definitely think early on it was an issue. It was again being a bit insecure, you know, not sure where I was in the space of broadcast talent. Obviously, working with guys like you and working with guys who's doing it for a longer time, maybe not being as confident in my own abilities. So sometimes you just be a little bit timid, you know, as you said. I don't think that's wrong at all. I think the past 3 or 4 years. Out of all the talents, obviously Yanko is also a guy who's not afraid of speaking his mind and being a little bit hot, you know, in it. Maui, for that matter, as well. But I think out of the regular ones, I'm probably the more, I wouldn't say spicy one, but probably the guy who just doesn't give a fuck. You know, when I think something, when I feel something, I'll say it on the disc. And I don't think I often find myself in a position where I'm not doing that. You know, it would be like if it's a great example, perfect example actually. The major grand final, we just had a Na'Vi game. I don't know if you saw it, but Na'Vi wins the major. Obviously, we spent 15-20 minutes highlighting Na'Vi, celebrating Na'Vi. You know, we speak all the good stuff about Na'Vi, touch on every player, blah 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 blah. Then Richard is asking a very relevant and excellent question to round it all off. You know, so where do Na'Vi go from here? You know, is it going to be another dynasty? What's going to happen with Na'Vi? Where do you see them in the future? I think Maui, Blair and Maniac gave the response. You know, they think they're going to be a top 5 team. Blah blah blah. You know, not a hot take at all. And I was thinking to myself, listen, I don't believe they're going to be a top 5 team at all. You know, and I was thinking to myself, is this the right time to say that? You know, should the segment be rounded off with me saying that, or is that going to take anything away from Na'Vi? And I came to the conclusion that no, fuck no. Like, we just spent 20 minutes celebrating Na'Vi. Now Richard is asking an excellent question. Where do they go from here? And I said something along the lines of, I don't think Na'Vi is going to be a stable top 5 team within the next 6 months. That's where I see it. If you want my honest opinion, that's how it is. And Richard went, oh, that's a hot take. Moving on. Reddit obviously made a thread about it. Some dude on Reddit, you know, how fucking dare Pimp do that? You know, they just won the major, blah, 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 blah. HLT went on it. I'm like, that's a great example of had I had the same thought 4 years ago or 3 years ago, I probably would not have done it. It looks better for the TO. It looks better for the guy hiring me. You know, you don't want the controversy. You don't want the guy that can upset people. But then again, I'm hired to say and speak my mind. I'm hired to give you my honest take on a certain team, my honest analysis, and that's kind of the route that I've been going down the last 3 years. I honestly don't give a fuck in that regard. I'm not the most spicy one, and maybe my takes are not that spicy all the time, but when I do feel something about something, then I say it, and the same can be said about what we spoke about earlier with the players as well. You know, I have no personal relationships to any player, so I do feel that I at any point can dunk on whatever player I think have done a shit job, said something stupid, done something stupid, behaved in a stupid way, and then still meet him in the elevator and be like, I still respect you. Like, you're probably a nice dude, but what you did in the game was fucking atrocious. And I think that distance to it is that's the road I'm going. You know, so I think the major final, the last segment right there, was a great example. People weren't happy about it. HLTV couldn't stop talking about it. Reddit couldn't stop talking about it. You know, the worst talent to ever be at a desk at a major final, because how could I dare say that about Navi? Whereas in reality, if I were watching a sports commentator, or if I were watching a broadcast in, let's say, football in Champions League, and fucking Ajax or Tottenham or Atletico Madrid just won the Champions League final, and someone asked the expert, so where do you see Atletico Madrid going from here? Where do you see Tottenham go from here? Is that going to be is Tottenham going to be the new Manchester City? And the dude would be like, yeah, actually that could happen. You know, I'd be like, fuck off. You're lying your balls off right now. If anyone could ever say that about me, if anyone could ever get that feeling about me, I feel like I would fail miserably at my job. And I think that's where the line is. Like, it's so easy, and you know that as well from having worked within this industry. Saying the right thing and just saying the thing that people want to hear, and please people, please the guy who's hiring you, please the TO, please the host, please everyone around you. It's the easiest thing in the fucking world. Like, it would be so easy to be the most likable dude ever. But it's not fun, it's not challenging, and it's not what I feel, so I will never, ever go down that route. I honestly am at a point where I would rather lose a certain job, rather have certain TOs think that I'm, you know, a little bit too edgy, or a little bit whatever that may be. If that's their take on it, if they read it like that, I'm not gonna cater to them wrongfully, which I think is wrongfully, obviously, wrongfully putting me in that box. Because just saying what people want to hear, you know, just please the fans, please the players, you know, make sure no one dislikes you, make sure no one is mad at you, make sure that you can always go down in the bar and drink with whatever player you may analyze. It's so easy, and it's so boring. So I think that's how I've been operating the last 4 years at the very least.
The thing that I noticed in your broadcast career was when you finally committed that this was the main thing you were doing, you also had some really tough years where, if people don't know, like if you ever look up, it'll say on all Wikipedia, like Pimp did all these majors, but he did them for the TV broadcast in Denmark. Like, you weren't getting always the big gig always. Sometimes you would be at the medium-sized tournament. By the way, people don't know, Maniac was stuck in the same position for many years. It was like these guys grinded and they kept holding, just like Scorian Lauders and all these people. Like, if people don't know, the secret to broadcast talent is persistence. You keep going, and you never give up until basically you get your shot. And eventually, I always say, your reputation lags a couple of years, but it'll catch up eventually. And when it catches up, then you get the shot. So people know now you're doing the big majors, and now you get to do kind of ELEAGUE and Cologne. You get to do all the tournaments you want to do now, basically. But there was these years where, like, essentially, unless someone spoke Danish, they might not even know you were doing events at the biggest level. Maybe they only saw you at a Star Ladder or a Dreamhack Open or something. Was this period hard? Because I know one of the issues is, it is a good gig actually to do that. In fact, I even think in the future, by the way, low-key, that could even be the coolest thing about the broadcast career. Maybe in 10, 15 years, some of us who don't attend the events just do a regional broadcast, that you guys are in Denmark and someone's in France and someone's in Germany. That could even be a cool outlet sort of as a later career, but it's not where you want to be. Like, if you're an analyst, you want to be at the event. You want to be you want to be on that major desk, right, for the final.
Yeah, 100%. I think I don't think it was a tough bit when I did a lot of Star Ladders, did a lot of Dreamhack Opens, you know, the famous 4 best of 3s a day, you know, 14 hours in a freaking warehouse in Sweden somewhere. Like that's how you earn your right to do the big tournaments. I like to think about those times as, you know, that's where I earned my right, that's where I learned a lot, and that's where I really grinded it. I think for the 2 years time that you're referring to, where you were still around, you know, where other talent with more experience were getting some of the bigger jobs, you know, there's also been certain majors where I just did the group stage, didn't do the playoff, or didn't do the grand final at the majors, but I think that was fair enough. You know, I don't think I had developed enough as a broadcast talent to justifiable, you know, think that I could kick you off or someone else, you know, whereas today, obviously, we're competitive people, and I do think I've earned my merits to be at the majors and be at the Colognes and the Katowices. So I don't remember that time as being bad by any means. Obviously you always hope for more, and it was this constant not knowing, and TOs hiring you 2 weeks before the event, and that sucked, and that was a big stress. But obviously TOs are getting better at that now, and it seems a little bit more stable. Also for me. And then to the second part of the question, I don't regret doing as much on Danish TV as I did. I have also declined a major international major to do the Danish major for Danish broadcast TV. So there was one missing out there. I think what happened was that it was fun, and we did it for 5 years, but it's now come back to bite me a little bit in the situation I'm in right now. Because if people remember, and you probably do, I used to do all the ESL events, the Pro Leagues, was part of that crew who did the ESL Pro League when it was on Facebook, when we had 500 viewers, and when we really had to dig deep to do it. I had the night shift in NA, so we met in at 10 p.m. and we left the building at 7 a.m. and we did broadcast and we did analysis, we did commentating in front of 500 people on Facebook. It was not the most motivating period, but we did it, and I was part of that crew. Used to do everything for ESL. But when Danish TV came around, they would come out and they'll be like, listen, here's the next calendar for the next 6 months. Can you do X, Y, and Z event? And I would then go to ESL and be, can you guys hire me 6 months in advance? At the time, that was not not possible, and I get it, fair enough. And then I went with let me try to balance it out. I'll do X amount of events for Danish TV, X amount of events for ESL, etc. And unfortunately, I kind of got in a position where I think ESL felt, and that's fair enough, that if they couldn't count on me for every event like they used to, they would rather go with someone else, which sucks, but it was fair enough. And I think that's when Maniac came in, and he was starting to grow as a talent as well, and become significantly better. So he took over my position within ESL in that regard, and he's now obviously doing everything, and justifiably so. He's fantastic. So doing it on Danish TV was fun. It was to a different audience. It was at a significantly lower level. Obviously, we had to cater to a different audience, and that was a fun challenge. But it definitely put me in a place now where I think my international broadcast career is not bad. I just did the major in Copenhagen. I do work for ESL still occasionally. I do work for Blast occasionally, but I think I could have been in a stronger position, so to speak, had I not done it. So. Do I regret it? No, it was fun. I was also hosting a lot of events on Danish TV, so I developed a lot of camera skills and a lot of skills in regards to acting as a host and working with certain TV producers. So you get experience from different avenues and get inspiration. So that's nice. But I think if you were to ask me right now, would I wish that I just stuck with ESL and kept building on a great relationship with them? Then probably yeah, because now I find myself in a position where I'm maybe not as safe as I used to be, or maybe not getting all the events like I used to. But I really don't hold up against anyone, because it's fair. If you can't rely on me 100%, then it's only fair you find someone else, and vice versa. So I think that's my project for the next couple of years now. I wanna get my spot back. I wanna prove to everyone that I should be at every single tournament, and not having me for your CSGO, CS2 tournament is a bad idea. So that's the motivation for now.
One thing I also pay attention to, because I was there at the beginning when there wasn't even analysis like this. It was just people on a desk sort of vaguely talking about a narrative, or obviously I started doing comedy. There's the joke. Like I actually was just like a fucking stand-up comic at one point in time for like a year. So that's why all the highlights are just me making a joke about someone, not even analysis of the game. Like when people started to develop things, like Janko brought like some of the tactical things into Smoke they did differently, and people started to bring, Sean Gers obviously was an in-game leader, so he could do all sorts of things. Maybe they were anti-strat in this position here. One thing I noticed you brought to the table in like when you started to get cooking as an analyst was you were one of the first people to track like entry stats, because obviously entry fraggers on the scoreboard never get the credit, do they? So what you would do is you'd go in this game, Stewie2K had like 11 rounds where he was the first person into the site, and you know what, he actually got a first kill 9 times. So even if on the scoreboard it looks bad, he was maybe the X factor in this game. And that was one thing I noticed you actually like one of the first people to do quite religiously. So can you give me some thoughts of what was the thinking behind this?
Yeah, true. I think that was before HLTV publicly had the
yes, I don't think they had it. Yeah. No, exactly. You had to do it manually, right? With a notebook, I'm guessing.
I have an old notebook where it's just like 100 pages with certain numbers that I couldn't really locate them right now, but it's definitely opening kill stats from various of games. I thought, as you said, that was an underrated factor. We never really spoke about it. It was one of those things people didn't pay attention to, and I think it was also, as you said, you have to you have to create your own identity, I guess, and you have to bring something new and something unique. And I think that was my way of doing that. That's one example of what I brought to the table, I guess. So I think I started to use that a lot. Got a lot of good feedback on it as well. And then obviously HLTV came out with their public stats, and everyone else started to do it as well. And then you have to come up with something new. I remember it happened as I thought to myself, and that's I always had that mindset. I always do that when I prepare for this, that whenever I go into a game, obviously we prepare a lot, we build a lot of graphics, we build a lot of storylines. It's probably much different than when you were doing desk segments, especially much different when I started doing it as well. Like you have a constant conversation with your producer, who then have a conversation with the graphics guy, and you build specific graphics for your specific points, and you have to narrate it and explain them, what do you want and when do you want to see it and how do you want to see it and all that kind of shit. So that's your part of your preparation. But I always have this take that I want to go into every single desk segment with an interesting point that people may not have thought of, So that's the question I ask myself. So when I go into a game or go into a segment, what could be one thing that people may not have thought of, or what could be one thing that people should look out for in this game that could be interesting? So if you ask yourself that question, you also force yourself to answer that question. And when you do that, you come up with something sometimes interesting. And that's what I did with the intro stats, because I remember it was probably during Cologne or something, a big tournament. You were there as well, I think, where Stewie 2K and ELEAGUE were dominating. And I think Stewie 2K, his stats was on a decline. People were saying like, oh, he's not great anymore. He's definitely not an NA grade, not in the conversation, blah, 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 blah. But he turned into this entry kill machine, So my thought was, okay, this is something to look out for in the game. Look out for Stewie 2K. He may be at the bottom of the scoreboard, but if 8 out of his 11 kills is entry kills, that's more impact than the guy with 12 kills and 0 entry kills, And I think a lot of the stuff that I brought to the table comes from the fact that I religiously do that for every single segment, whether it's an online segment or a group stage game or a major final, always have one or two things ready where what could be interesting or what is something people may not think of that is off the record, that is not prepared, that is not, built into a graphic or built into the run of show or something like that, in case there's a technical timeout, in case there's extra time, in case there's a conversation that goes in that direction, So you're always prepared in that way. And I think that's where it stems from. And it's also the advice that I give out to a lot of people who message me in terms of broadcast talent and doing analysis. Like, I think it's a very underrated thing to do. And it's a good thing to do as well, because you force yourself to answer that question. By then you're prepared with something that for many people would be special. For many people will be like, oh, I didn't think about that, or oh, I'm going to look out for that in the game. And that's sort of like the vibe I want to give people when they watch a desk segment. I want to give them something they can attach to happen in the game. So when they see it transpiring in the game, then be like, oh yeah, I heard that before the game, and that made that segment interesting because now I see this now, and that is going to make sure they come back next time, to listen to the next segment before a game, in that regard. So that's where it stems from, I think.
At the end of this interview, do you have a final message? Is there someone you want to say hello or thank you to?
No, not at all, honestly. As I said, I keep my private life and my gaming life very separated. And I think within this gaming space, there's certain people I respect a lot for their work ethic, for the work they do, you being one of them. But I don't think there's anyone I owe a thank you. There's not anyone who's done anything for me that made me able to be where I'm at. I think at the end of the day, I'm self-made in pretty much everything I do. Goes from analysis work, goes from working out, biking, etc., etc. My weight loss, most people thought that I got that, what do you call it, like a gastric bypass surgery,
the band
like
or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, exactly. Like everything I do is to the bone self-made. Doesn't mean I don't take advice whenever you reach out or someone else reach out or when someone gives you feedback, but I always find it a bit I don't know, I don't like it when an interviewer is asking a player like, anyone want to thank at home, anything want to say thank you? It's like, sure, like it means nothing to me. At least I don't have anything I want to thank. I thank myself for being here, and I thank you for wanting me here. But apart from that, I do my own shit.
Mangatak.
Welcome.
In this esports world, it can seem like everyone's against you, but I've always got the Skrilluminati, my Patreon community, riding with me. And it is thanks to the support of the following people, this video and all of them on my channel are made possible. Matt Pugnaccio Rakula, Ahmed Haju, Frisky, Tosh, Jensen Gore, Animosity, Toucan, Tobias Bernasconi, If you've ever watched my videos, you know now I'm going to give a massive shout out to Jerky's Minion, the main man. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? You want teasers? Find out who the upcoming interview guests are. Maybe you want to ask me a question. I tend to answer them at length in my video AMA. Do you want to take part in one of those Dignitas discussions where we talk about what you're interested in esports? Well, if any of these perks or more appeal to you, put your money where your mouth is. Join the Illuminati today, where in the description box below is a Patreon link.